The soft hum of my apartment filled the room, broken only by the gentle tapping of rain against the window. I adjusted the silk blouse on my shoulders, feeling the smooth fabric slip under my fingers, and glanced at the skyline beyond my floor-to-ceiling window. Everything looked perfect. From this height, the city seemed small, manageable, almost gentle. Yet, despite the view, my phone buzzed insistently on the glass table. I picked it up, heart tightening. The screen displayed a name I hadn't seen in years. Dad. I froze. Memories collided in a chaotic storm, his shouting, the accusations, the words no child should hear. I wish I'd erased you before birth. The memory hit sharper than any thunder outside. And yet, here I was, years later, holding a life he had tried to diminish. A life I had built quietly, away from his scorn. A tiny, ironic smile tugged at my lips. He probably imagined I was still struggling, dependent, lost in the maze of his expectations. Little did he know, I had spent years turning his venom into fuel. I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of resolve settle in my chest. The buzz of the phone pulled me into the present. Every message, every ring, was a reminder that the past doesn't stay buried forever. And today, I wasn't hiding anymore. I remember that day like it was yesterday, though I was only 16. My room smelled faintly of lavender and old books, my notebooks scattered across the floor. I had made a mistake. Or, at least, I had been blamed for one. The truth didn't matter to him. My father stormed in, eyes blazing with fury, hands trembling as he pointed at me. I can't believe you did this. Do you have any idea the trouble you've caused? I opened my mouth, ready to explain, but he cut me off with a yell that still echoes in my head. You're hopeless. I wish I'd erased you before birth. The words landed like knives, and for the first time, I felt truly small. My hand shook, my chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I tried to speak, to tell him I wasn't at fault, but my voice trembled and died before reaching him. My father's scorn wasn't new, but this was a devastation that felt permanent. I remember clenching my jaw and holding back tears as I walked to my grandmother's house that evening. Granny May always had a way of seeing through my fear and doubt. She sat me down, her hands warm and rough over mine, and whispered, "No one can decide your worth but you, Madeline. Not even him. You have to find your own way, and one day, he'll have to see you for who you really are." In her tiny, sunlit kitchen, I found a small notebook she gave me, a journal with a cracked leather cover. "Write it all," she said. "Every fear, every dream. Let it be your map." That night, back in my room, I held the notebook close and realized that leaving was the only way I could survive. I couldn't change him, couldn't make him see reason. But I could take control of my own life. The next morning I started planning. Quietly, I found jobs, saved every dollar, and nurtured my talents away from his gaze. Every insult, every cruel word became fuel. I refused to let his hatred define me. The girl who had trembled under his words was slowly learning to stand on her own. And deep down, I promised myself that one day I would show him, and everyone else, what he had truly underestimated. Leaving home wasn't a single dramatic act. It was a series of quiet decisions, each one taking me further from the life I knew and closer to the one I was determined to build. I found a small apartment in the city, its peeling paint and creaky floors a far cry from the luxurious house I'd grown up in, but it was mine. Every dollar I earned went into survival first, and then into the seed of something bigger, myself. It was there, in the hum of fluorescent office lights and the smell of coffee, that I met Clara Jennings, a woman 10 years older, sharp, and unapologetically successful in a field dominated by men. She noticed me fumbling through my first freelance marketing gig and, instead of dismissing me like everyone else did, she offered guidance. "Madeline, talent doesn't mean much without persistence. Show up every day, even when it hurts," she said, handing me a list of books and articles that became my unofficial curriculum. I remember nights hunched over my laptop, typing until my fingers ached, making cold calls, learning design, pitching ideas that were rejected more often than accepted. I doubted myself constantly. Every time I thought I wasn't enough, I remembered Granny May's words and the little leather notebook. "Your worth is yours to decide," I whispered to myself, tracing the worn edges as if they could anchor me. My first breakthrough was small but monumental, a mid-sized client who trusted me to manage their brand campaign. I poured everything into it: strategy, design, countless late nights, and when the campaign succeeded, I felt the stirrings of something I hadn't dared to feel before: pride without apology. From there, I quietly expanded my portfolio. I invested in online courses, networked relentlessly, and slowly, quietly, built my own small marketing firm. I kept it under wraps from my family, posting only vague updates on social media. Busy week at work, or excited for new projects. They assumed I was surviving, struggling even. They had no idea I was thriving. And yet, every step forward was measured, deliberate. I didn't just want success. I wanted freedom. The freedom to live without their judgment, without the sting of old words, without the shadow of my father's anger over me. Each late night, each rejection, each tiny victory was part of a larger plan: to become someone they couldn't ignore, someone they could no longer undermine. By the time I was 26, my firm had its first major client worth 6 figures. My savings had grown into investments. I had bought my first piece of art, a bold abstract that reminded me daily that beauty and strength could coexist. I had achieved what I once thought impossible, all without anyone at home realizing. And all the while, Granny May's notebook remained tucked into the top drawer of my desk, a silent witness to my journey from a trembling, frightened girl into a woman who was unafraid to claim her life. The knock on my office door was soft but insistent, an echo from a past I thought I had carefully compartmentalized. I didn't need to look at the visitor ID, I already knew. My father and mother, standing together, expecting the same timid, uncertain daughter they had spent years trying to mold. I leaned back in my leather chair, hands folded, eyes scanning the familiar lines of my office. Walls adorned with modern art, sleek shelving with awards from campaigns I had quietly executed, a floor-to-ceiling window framing the city skyline like a testament to everything I had built. The faint scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with a hint of vanilla from the candle on my desk, a small indulgence I allowed myself. They froze, and I let them. Finally, my father spoke, his voice a mixture of authority and unease. "Madeline, we thought you were," he trailed off, eyes darting to the certificates, the framed headlines naming my firm among the city's top startups. I smiled, calm, unhurried, letting the silence stretch just long enough for their discomfort to sink in. "Struggling? Hopeless? Unsuccessful?" I asked softly. "That's not exactly what happened." My mother's lips parted, a weak gasp escaping. We didn't realize." I gestured to the glossy wall-mounted screen behind me. A slideshow flickered to life. My firm's quarterly reports, my clients' endorsements, photos of my speaking at conferences, interviews, awards. Every detail meticulously curated to show not just my success, but the depth of my independence. "You see," I said, leaning forward slightly, my voice steady. "While I was being blamed for mistakes I didn't make, I built something real. Something you never expected me to. My firm has grown beyond anything I imagined at 16. I'm financially independent, fully in control, and not just surviving, I'm thriving." My father's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. But there was something else there too, a flicker of disbelief, shame, a trace of awe. My mother's hand hovered near her mouth, trembling. I didn't pause for forgiveness. I didn't wait for apology. I simply let them absorb the truth. The apartment we'd rented for our first client meeting, the luxury of my office, the evidence of my success, it was all undeniable. "And yes," I added, my tone steady but sharp, "I did not take the blame for your mistakes. I refuse to let your anger and your harsh words define me. I built a life where I am not just seen, but respected." They looked around, silent now, every piece of evidence of my journey pressing down like a weight they couldn't lift. I could see the conflict in their faces: pride, guilt, and a dawning recognition that the girl they had tried to erase was now untouchable, not just in accomplishments, but in self-respect. It was a moment of power, yes, but also clarity. I realized, standing in my office, that the confrontation wasn't about revenge. It was about presence, about showing them, and finally showing myself, that the scars of the past did not dictate the boundaries of my future. I watched them fidget in my office, the weight of their guilt pressing down like an invisible hand. For years, I had been the one bending, hiding, excusing their anger, their cruelty. Now the roles had reversed. The power wasn't about money or success, it was about choice. I could decide if they remained part of my life and under what terms. "You want a relationship with me?" I asked, my voice calm but unwavering. "Then there are conditions. Simple, but non-negotiable." I started with my father, the man who had once shouted that he wished I'd never been born. "You will apologize sincerely, not just the words, but the understanding behind them. You will attend counseling to address your anger and your need to control. And you will stop undermining me in any way, verbal or otherwise. Only then can we rebuild anything resembling trust." His face paled. He opened his mouth to argue, but I shook my head. "Not negotiable. If you can't do this, you can stay out of my life." Then I turned to my mother. She had been quieter, always trying to mediate, but never truly intervening. "You will stop excusing his behavior. You will support me as I build my life. No passive-aggressive comments, no secret comparisons to my past mistakes. You will learn to see me as I am, not as the child you once hoped I'd be." Their eyes shifted, a mixture of fear and awe. They had underestimated me for so long, and now they were finally seeing the consequences of that underestimation. "And for both of you," I continued, my tone softening slightly, "you will celebrate your own successes and pursue your dreams. Not to impress me, not to guilt me, but because your lives are yours to live. Toxic patterns stop here. We either grow together or remain strangers. That is my choice." I paused, letting the words settle. It wasn't cruelty, though it may have felt harsh. It was clarity. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was offering a path forward, a path where respect, accountability, and growth replaced old patterns of blame and resentment. Finally, I added, "I love you both, but love without boundaries is chaos. I will not be pulled back into the shadow of your past mistakes. I am not the child who trembled under your words. I am the woman who built a life you can only observe, not control." The room was silent. They were forced to reckon not just with my accomplishments, but with my autonomy. It was empowering, exhilarating even, to see them pause, understanding that this wasn't about wealth or success. It was about self-respect, and I held the key. I knew this was only the beginning of their journey too. Change doesn't happen overnight, but the conditions were clear. For the first time, I felt fully in charge, my past no longer a shackle, but a foundation. Weeks passed after the confrontation, and slowly, subtly, I began to notice changes. My father attended counseling sessions, awkward at first, but gradually more present, listening instead of lecturing. My mother started pursuing her own passions, painting classes, book clubs, volunteering, finding parts of herself she had long ignored. I watched from a distance at first, curious, cautious. But as I saw them take steps toward growth, I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't realized I had been holding back for years. The weight of their disapproval, their anger, their disappointment, it was finally lifting. And in its place, a sense of peace, earned and deliberate, settled around me like sunlight in the morning. I found myself at my desk one evening, fingers tracing the worn edges of Granny May's leather notebook. Its pages were filled with old scribbles, dreams, and advice, reminders of the girl I once was and the woman I had become. I smiled softly, remembering her words, "Your worth is yours to decide." I had finally understood their depth. My firm was thriving, my clients trusted me implicitly, and my life reflected the choices I had made for myself, choices no one could dictate, no one could erase. Yet the real triumph wasn't the awards, the office, or the city skyline that gleamed from my window. It was the reclamation of my own story. The girl who had once trembled under cruel words had grown into a woman who spoke, acted, and lived with uncompromising authenticity. I leaned back in my chair, a sense of serenity washing over me. Change takes time, patience, and courage, sometimes more than you think you have. And yet, here I was, proof that the scars of the past do not determine the boundaries of the future. The leather notebook sat closed on my desk, a reminder of resilience and wisdom, of the promise I had made to myself as a frightened 16-year-old. I whispered to no one in particular, a soft affirmation, almost a vow. I am seen, I am heard, and I will never let anyone diminish my worth again. And with that, I turned back to the window, watching the city lights shimmer like tiny stars below, feeling the fullness of a life claimed on my own terms. Strong, independent, graceful,